Welcome, everybody. Just going to start off by letting you know that we've had a bit of a bifurcated meetings tonight. We started at 6:30 with a meeting to go into camera, which we've now finished. And the next portion will be the Committee of the Whole, which will be chaired by our acting mayor, Councillor Braithwaite. We'll take a brief adjournment after that and then come back to the council meeting, so which will start immediately after we finish Committee of the Whole. And likely we'll bring, depending on what happens in the Committee of the Whole, we'll bring some of those recommendations forward into council for endorsement or whatever. So that's the order of business here tonight. So I turn it over to Councillor Braithwaite, please.
Thanks so much, Mayor. You took away half of my speech, so that's good. Welcome, everybody, to December 11th Committee of the Whole. We do acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Coast and Strait Salish peoples. Specifically, we recognize the Algonquin-speaking people, known today as the Songhees and Esquimalt nations, and that their historic connections to these lands continue to this day. And I will remind everyone that we are video recording the meetings, and they're streamed live, and they will be archived on the municipal website. The item number 1 under corporate items is the Oak Bay Police 5-year strategic plan. We do have Chief Constable Brinton and Deputy Chief Constable Bernodes in attendance to present the strategic plan, and I'm going to call on them and have them present, and then we'll have a little bit of discussion and then some public input. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just start by way of introduction to the There we go. We currently are at the end of our of a 5-year plan. It expires the end of this month, and so for the last year, we've been working towards the development of the next 5-year plan, which will take us from 2018 to 2022. So I'm not going to spend myself a lot of time on the details of it, but I will say that what this does is we still have our bread and butter is our response to 911 calls, our major investigations, that type of thing. But what the strategic plan process does is it allows us to identify from the community what they see as some of the key issues in the community, and then it also allows us to identify initiatives to tackle those things. Much of it are the proactive things, with the long-term goal that it actually will reduce the serious crime and the different things that we have to investigate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Bernodes. He led much of the way in the consultation and some of the public outreach on this, so I'll let him speak to it.
Okay, I'd ask to pull your attention to the screens up there. So the first step in strategic planning, obviously, is to get the view of the public. So we consulted the public on what they felt the policing priorities were in Oak Bay. And this was the first time we used an online survey for that primarily. We had 653 respondents, which we're really pleased with. And it was pretty consistent messaging on what was important to them. But we supplemented that with 2 in-person community meetings, one up at Henderson and one at the Monterey Center. And we also had our first social media meeting, which was sort of an interesting experience where we tried to suss out what was important to the public and also answer any questions. And that's something we might do again in the future. After we got all that information, we put it together and we met with all of our staff. And we had some interviews with some stakeholders, some key stakeholders like UVic, some school administrators, et cetera. So from that, we ended up with 3 key priorities, which you can see at the bottom of the screen there: community engagement / visibility, property crime, and traffic. So by priorities, that doesn't mean that people are necessarily unhappy with the current state. It means that that would be the area they'd like us to focus on. And to me, that's like a 120/80 blood pressure. That's a perfect reading when a community says community engagement, visibility, property crime, traffic, because I've worked in communities where gangs might be on there, or guns, or drugs, and all sorts of other things. So to see traffic, property crime, and community engagement is really positive. But still concerning, especially if you're one of those who have been victimized by property crime. And with traffic, it's nice to see traffic because while it's still very important, we don't have a high rate of traffic accidents, and certainly not serious collisions where people are badly hurt or fatal collisions. So again, that's when normally if you see traffic, that might be indicative of a real dangerous situation. That's not what we face here. We face more of a sort of a chronic nuisance type traffic that probably many of us have experienced, where people, you know, are a little bit complacent, roll stop signs, maybe going a little fast. So we're planning on focusing on those 3 items going forward for the next 5 years. So each of the 3 priorities are broken down on the next pages. This first one's community engagement. So our objective is to obviously increase our community engagement over the next 5 years, and each year for the next 5 years, and we'll measure that by resurveying the public. Now, we don't want to survey annually. We'll get survey fatigue. So we think at the 2.5-year mark, we'll do another public survey and then another one at the 5-year mark to sort of gauge it. In the meantime, we'll measure it based on our outputs and our activities. So when we met with our staff, we had a whole list of community initiatives and areas we want to focus. And in fact, the chief and I just came from our first ever Oak Bay Police Christmas Choir at the Oak Bay Lodge. And I'm not sure we'll ever get invited back, but it is one of our ways we're trying to reach out to seniors and keep that relationship with them. They seem to appreciate it. So I've listed some of our initiatives there. I don't want to list them all specifically because they will change throughout 5 years, obviously. And we're going to have annual meeting with the Oak Bay Police staff and have a sense of what needs to change. What's working, we'll continue doing. And if it's not working, we'll add new initiatives. So our initiatives need to be flexible, but our objective and our measure needs to stay the same. So that's the intent there. Same with property crime. So we've grabbed a few of the key property crimes that affect Oak Bay: theft from autos, theft of bikes, break-and-enter residential, and break-and-enter commercial. Now, 5 B&E commercial is probably the lowest number I've seen in my 26 years of policing, but it's impactful for those 5 people, and it's also a measure that we'll use because it's still a number we want to drive down. I mean, we'll be happy when it's 0. Pushing it down annually is going to get interesting around year number 5, but let's hope we can do it. So that's the measure here, is we're going to try to push property crime down annually. And obviously it's not just going to be from police operations. A lot of it, if you look at our theft from autos, as I've told council before, it's around leaving cars unlocked. So a lot of it's going to be educating the public and sort of helping the public help us. And but I'm confident if we really attack these as the priorities they are, that we'll make some significant progress. And likewise with traffic. So I haven't listed all of our initiatives here, but you can see from the measures that we're going to compare to going forward: pedestrian injury accidents 7, total injury accidents 28, so 7 of those were pedestrian, and total number of accidents 122. So that's a nice measure that we can use to try to decrease that, because I don't think anyone wants the type of policing that's just sort of like the cop at the bottom of a hill with a radar gun trying to create stats, and that's not the type of enforcement we use in Oak Bay, as you know. But certainly addressing the number of accidents and hitting those target areas that seem to be more likely areas for accidents is something that's important. And we've been, lucky. While it's 7 pedestrian accidents, they weren't fatalities. And, but a pedestrian accident, it only takes a few more kilometers an hour for it to be a fatality. So it's something that we're going to take very seriously, and we've listed several of the initiatives there. And that is, in essence, our strategic plan. So every year we'll revisit all of our initiatives, and we'll take the measures we can to assess how we're doing and keep tackling this. But this plan itself should stay stagnant for 5 years. One of the items in our community engagement is to create a new website, and I'm pleased to tell you that we expect that to be done by January, and this strategic plan will then be accessible to the public on that website. And we'll also post information updates as well on our strategic planning, so the public can keep an eye and help keep us accountable to ensure that we're delivering on what they expect from us. And that's it, Your Honor, Your Worship.
Thank you so much. I think one thing I should have said perhaps at the beginning of your presentation was that while the district is responsible for funding police services in Oak Bay, the police board oversees the department's operations. So really your strategic plan was being presented to council and the community for information. So thank you for that, and thank you for keeping it so brief, because we do have a very large agenda today.
And I should mention, I didn't mention Sandra Waddington, board member, who was a great assistance, as was all of the police board in the design of this, and we worked with them throughout the process.
Perfect, thank you. So any questions from committee? Councillor Ney.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, I have a few questions. You were mentioning the website. That's terrific as a way to broadcast information to the community. Will there be a way on that website for the community to communicate with you? I mean, it looks like you're going to try to engage the community as a strategy of your community engagement plan.
Yeah, so we will, in fact, have a way to communicate with us, but we're going to need to be super clear because I'm trying to be quite active on social media right now, and I do find from time to time people are tweeting me at 11 p.m. looking for police assistance, and we really need to not create that environment. It's not a mechanism for that, but it's a great communication tool. And we do have a caveat on there, but obviously it's pretty easy for people to just grab their phone now and tweet a public safety concern. So, but to answer your question, yes, on the website there will be a way to communicate in.
Okay, thank you. And I was pleased to see that you're going to increase your work around addressing speeding. I was wondering, how do you identify which parts of the community to focus in on?
Well, I think the primary focus will be where accidents have occurred in the past. Throughout the last 3 to 5 years, we'll look, and because that's the main focus is to increase public safety. But another focus will be where we're getting the complaints, and we get a number of complaints. And so one of our initiatives we're going to start, which I think is a sort of a typical Oak Bay policing initiative. It's a really nice one, I think. It's one where if you call us about speeding on your street being a constant concern, we'll have a member come over to your house and actually invite you out to use the laser or radar gun with us so that you can see the speeds that cars are traveling. Because what's happening, and I live on a street in Oak Bay itself where sometimes cars feel really fast because the sidewalk's immediately adjacent to the street, but they're not actually speeding, or if they are, it's marginal. And so it's not to suggest to people that cars aren't speeding on their street, but it's just to make sure that there's this good flow of information, accurate information, and communication.
I do want to say I'm really impressed with the survey that you've done and the way you've connected with the community and responded to put together this strategic plan. I think it really resonates well with the community. One other issue that's not a part of the strategic plan that I'd just like to put on, have put up for discussion right now is that back in February, the Globe and Mail did a survey of the unfounded case files around sexual assault. And since then, just on the weekend, we saw on the Globe, there's been another survey done that follows up on the police services who have gone back to the files and responded to what are the issues there. And I'm just wondering, it's not part of your strategic plan, but I think it's on the mind of a lot of people. We live in a community with a university where 1 in 4 young women apparently have been sexually assaulted. We're in that jurisdiction. We have a high school of 1,300 young people. And I think it's really important that the public understands and knows that the perception is that our Oak Bay Police it's a safe place to go where survivors will be heard and dealt with well. And I'm not for a minute suggesting they're not, because I have high regard for your staff down there and the work they're doing in the community. But I'd just like to bring that into the public sphere and have that discussion, if you don't mind.
Sure. I indicated earlier tonight that the strategic plan focuses a lot on the feedback we're getting from the community, a lot of the proactive extra things that we can do to make this place a safe community. But we still will always have our core policing responsibilities, which include the investigation of serious crime, which I classify this to be in that realm. So we although it doesn't necessarily show on the strategic plan, we still will have training opportunities for our people. We still will have interaction with the university and other groups in the community to deal with that type of thing, victim services. We have a presence on diversity committees in the region so that we can make sure that anybody feels safe coming to us. So I'm aware of that article as well, and it was a study. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but we were identified in the initial study as being a high rate of unfounded events. Without getting into too much detail about that, the reality is we do have low numbers, and a lot of it was based that came from the fact that there was the way the files are coded, and there's certain coding in the province of British Columbia that municipal police forces are compelled to use. The reality is we actually didn't have 7 unfounded events during that 5-year period. Reality is we probably had 1, and we were quite confident that it was unfounded. Now I don't want that to appear as though we're kind of whitewashing it. It's still a major priority for us, and there's been a lot of conversation around this survey, or this study, I should say, and I think that's good, because anything that raises the topic within community, even if it's because of an article by a newspaper, we all know today in particular it's all over the media, the Me Too movement, which I think is a great thing to publicize it and make people feel more comfortable. Anything that we can do, we're presenting at Camosun College, we're in the schools, anything we can do to make people feel that in Oak Bay, you come to us in Oak Bay, you will be taken seriously, and we will do whatever we can to help the situation.
Just one more point. Thank you very
Sure.
much, Chief. Sorry.
I was just going to add
Deputy,
a bit.
yeah.
Sure.
So I think having just come from the RCMP 6 months ago, one reason I think Oak Bay was singled out, obviously for statistics reasons, if we have one more B&E, our B&E rate skyrockets. But it's in the RCMP, we have a different code we can use called unsubstantiated. So when the BC municipal forces don't use that, we either have to found or unfound an event. And there's risks on either side of an event that doesn't go to court, because if you found an event, the perpetrator involved is now seen to be, when they get a background check done for work, etc., seen to be sort of in the guilty category. So this is what we're addressing at the BC Municipal Chiefs, because the RCMP has this category called unsubstantiated. So that's sort of that in-between ground. It's not founded, but it's not unfounded. There's just not enough to substantiate it. And that would have been a helpful code for others to use, I think. But there's some reasons among the municipal police they don't want to go that direction either. So, but it's a topic that's on the agenda for tomorrow's BC Municipal Chiefs again, because we need to be united in the way that we approach this, because we all score our files the same. And if someone doesn't do it the same, they'll appear to be way off the charts to Stats Canada. So.
Just one more comment, if I may, Chair, please. Thank you. Just because the report in February came out at 44%, which is high, and I appreciate what you've just shared with us, but I think it's really important that our community understands how well trained our police are. And I hope there will be some opportunity where you're able to report out about what the unit has done in response to, like, whatever it is, to make it very clear that our police are well trained, and that is a place where people can safely go and be supported to make a report.
Yeah, I think on this website, one of the visions that I have is that we will have kind of a regular discussion of topics of the day. And I think that once, as a result of this recent study or media report, and then the fact that the BC Chiefs are currently working towards this scoring issue, and I'll get into that real quick. I know you're in the gym. I see that that'll be a forum that we can just present things, and I could see us doing an update on that. Just in closing, I don't want us to get caught up on this unfounded, founded scoring. The reality is these are people, and our priority is to address the needs of the people in this community, or people that come into this community. So let's throw the numbers away. Our role is to have highly trained people and to take these matters serious and to take them to a better place, type of thing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments, questions of the Chief or Deputy Chief? Councillor Croft and then Mayor Jensen.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. It looks to me as though you've already begun some of the things. I noticed some officers walking to the high school the other day, and I also noticed, I was chatting with one, and he got quite busy giving out a friendly ticket, you're calling it, or a positive ticket. He called it a friendly ticket, and that was really interesting. In your statistics of pedestrian total injury accidents and number of accidents, have you tracked the bicycle accidents in this community? Because that could be pedestrians with bikes as well as with vehicles.
I didn't put it in here. It's a number I could get for Mayor and Council. I'd probably have to get it from ICBC. Often accidents don't get reported to us if they're not of a significant value or an injury. A lot of people will have an incident with another person, they exchange details, and it really never gets police involvement. But I could try to seek that information from ICBC for you and get it back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Jensen.
I just wanted to pick up something the deputy said about Sandra Waddington and recognize her for the work that she did on the current proposal, but also she was a bit of a pioneer. This 5 years ago when we had the first one, that was really the first robust, significant, broad spectrum strategic plan that I understand, had ever been used and done for the police. And Sandra Waddington was front and center on that round, as she was in this latest one. So, and it just happens that this month, in a few days, she'll no longer be on the board. Her 6-year term limit has come up, but certainly want to recognize her for the work that she's done, in particular on this and other issues such as the mental health issues and also the Association of Police Boards right across British Columbia. She's been an integral part of that, so we shall certainly miss her, but I want to just underscore the great help that she's been. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have two comments. One is that the thing that jumped out to me in your report was that Oak Bay is the least violent community in BC and the second least in Canada, and that's really impressive. So thank you for that statistic. And also, as far as the social media goes, I know Deputy Bernardes, you are very well versed in social media right now, and I appreciate that when I see you on the Facebook, on the Twitter. So thank you for that. So I'm going to go to the public. If any public has any questions or input, please come up to the mic and say your name, write down your address, and we can address council or committee.
James Sotanum, 1009 Monterey Avenue. Through you, Chair. First of all, congratulations. I think it's quite impressive that we have a strategic plan. I wish all departments had that. But my question is to be very brief. I'd like to know if there's any provision in the plan on how to deal with the issue of medical marijuana. Both from the point of view of regulation, but also I'm assuming that the municipality will need quite a bit of resources, including financial resources. If you could speak to that.
Thank you for your question and your feedback. We so our preparation for legalized marijuana is really going to be more traffic focused. And we have, in fact, that's one initiative I did write down, to ensure we are trained and ready for increased impaired driving by marijuana. And we are sending one of our sort of traffic gurus on a course to become an expert in that area. We do see there being an increased need, obviously, on that issue. Other areas of marijuana usage are going to be probably more health related, which is a provincial mandate, not our mandate. So I don't foresee, and I can defer to the chief, but I don't foresee an increase need for resources in Oak Bay based on the legalization of marijuana. I do see an increased need for training and education, particularly around the driving, but the harms related to health really isn't our mandate or a municipal taxpayer burden to bear.
Thank you. No further comment? No. Anybody else in the public like to make any comment or question? Okay. Seeing none, then I'll look to the committee for a motion to receive for information. Oh. Sorry. Is there... Oh. Ms. Matthews? Sorry, I didn't see you. Put up your hand back there.
I was a bit hesitant. Maybe Kathleen Matthews, 1180 St. Louis. I thank you very much. It's very interesting. I didn't come tonight really for this thing, but it just occurred to me, and I maybe don't know very much about it, but the issue of bylaw enforcement and the role of the police in bylaw enforcement, because my sense is that is a priority, and could have been maybe stressed in the strategic plan. I mean, I'm thinking about just things like dogs in Uplands Park, but there's a lot of other bylaws that just, you try to phone, and I think the idea of being able to tweet problems, much as it happens at 11 o'clock at night, and maybe you have to answer, but I think encouraging that, because that's what everybody's doing, and you see a pothole, and there's apps to register potholes, and apps for this and that, and so I think just recognizing that we need to have enough staff to be able to deal with communication by Facebook and by tweet, and I maintain a page myself, so I know how hard it is to respond, but I think it's just the way it is. So those two issues, well, not really, just I'd like to know a little bit more bylaw enforcement, and I know there's an enforcement officer, but I think it's also police responsibility and what we can do to address what I think is a void in bylaw enforcement. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I believe bylaw enforcement falls under the municipal hall, but I'll let
Okay, maybe I'll
you
I'll focus more on.
I just did read it. It says bylaw enforcement. It says there is a role for police, but I just thought that's what I was
So,
saying as well.
yeah, and when bylaw is not available, depending on the nature of the offense, etc., we're more than happy to respond to the call, and we do have the authority to to issue bylaw tickets, etc. On the issue of the sort of late night tweeting and responding, part of the problem with that is not just the resources required, but there's a whole system in place for when someone dials 911. The fact that you can trace the call, the fact that even if they hang up right away, we can find them. The line's recorded for all sorts of reasons, both justice and so there's high risk. But I do think we are moving to a place, and when we get to the integrated dispatch center, which we will have in the future here in the near term, in the South Island, that will be something that they'll keep exploring, and they're trying it in other areas, but there are risks. It's more challenging than just simply someone manning a Twitter device.
Thank you. Okay, I believe I have a motion on the floor and a seconder.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? None opposed? Thank you. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Item number 2 on the agenda is under land use items, and it's the Community Association of Oak Bay Turkey Head recommendation, and the Community Association of Oak Bay and the Greater Victoria Placemaking Network have undertaken a process to discuss the possibilities and visions for Turkey Head. So we do have representatives from both of those groups. And I just remind Council that there is a comprehensive lease between the district and the Oak Bay Marina that defines how much of the land at Turkey Head may be used, and any potential change in use at Turkey Head may require changes to the lease. That lease is not set to expire until December 29th in 2022. So I believe we have Mr. Nichols from the Community Association of Oak Bay and Mr. Appleton from the Greater Victoria Placemaking Network here tonight. And I understand you have a 10-minute presentation, so it's 7:28. Go.
Oh, 7:38. Okay, we're on. Thank you very much for hearing us this evening. Like a lot of the things we like to do with the Community Association, we decided to do this in partnership with the Greater Victoria Placemaking Network, and because they are very skilled at creating vibrant urban places. And so we're going to actually, as we partnered in that, we're going to share this presentation within 10 minutes. And Andrew Appleton is, thank you.
No pressure. Thanks very much. In addition to being an Oak Bay resident, I am a director of the Greater Victoria Placemaking Network, and it's our pleasure to be here tonight. Why are we talking about Turkey Head? And the discussion really started around Turkey Head because it's a space that's well known to the community. For those who might be watching online who aren't aware of what we're talking about, it's the space immediately adjacent to the Oak Bay Marina. It is a community amenity, and it is a public space. This was something that we found out through our discussions. This was a surprise to a lot of people, but it is public space owned by the district and well appreciated and well loved by the people who live around it, and there are people who visit from elsewhere as well to use it. In addition to being public space, it's also ecologically important. There's a lot going on the ecological side of things that you can observe from the Turkey Head area. And probably more significant than anything is the extensive First Nations history on the site. First Nations referred to the site as Spewhung, and there's been a lot of discussion about interpreting First Nations uses of that site. And our discussion point was whether or not this was actually an underutilized space. So the partners on this discussion have been the Community Association of Oak Bay, which I think is well known to council and well known to the community. The Greater Victoria Placemaking Network is a nonprofit group, and our mission is to inspire people, neighborhoods, and communities to create vibrant public spaces that promote health, happiness, and well-being. And a central tenet of placemaking is the idea of cheap, simple, quick, and easily implemented activations on a site to inspire people's thoughts about how that space might be used. And so our goal with this process, speaking to about Turkey Head with the public, was very simply to start a dialogue. We came at it with no predisposed ideas, no limitations. No, we didn't talk budget, we didn't talk those kinds of things. We just wanted to throw it out to the public such that they could have a discussion about, if they had a blank slate, what would they like to see happen on the site? The only small limitation, if you would call it that, is that what we gave to them was, as we mentioned off the top, that there are existing uses on the site, to be cognizant of and respectful of the existing uses that are on the site, but how could it be more and how could it be expanded? So it was really a dialogue on the future of Turkey Head, and we're really very excited about what we heard, and Chris gets to talk about the fun part.
Okay. Part of what we did the Oak Bay talk, and then we had a 3-hour sort of charrette at Windsor Pavilion there, where we talked, and we had placemaking introduce it, and then we all walked down to Turkey Head, walked around there to sort of visualize ideas, and then came them back and then wrote them all down. And so that was a really good opportunity for people actually to go out to Turkey Head and see, what is it that we could do here if we're looking at no sort of parameters. And then further on in the summer, we used 3 of the night markets to say that we're in the market to talk turkey, actually. And so we had a number of people, along with the Greater Victoria Placemaking Network, yes, where we put up a whiteboard. And people came and said, okay, so we had a topic up there, and they would write down, okay, this is what we'd like to see at Turkey Head. So, and then we had so much discussion by people that live in the neighborhood and people that had no idea what Turkey Head was, where it was, what can you do with it. And so it was really engaging to get so much positive energy from people going, wow, this is great. I'm glad, one thing, they were really glad that we were out there asking people about their ideas. And secondly, they were really glad that we were asking them about, a really good public amenity that's out there. And I'm going backwards. That's always good. There we go. Sorry, our top ideas. And we have a lot of ideas. And hopefully you've all got we gave our written engagement. So there's a number of pages. You can shuffle through that at your own will. As we know, people already use the space. But they would like the people that we talk to would like to see more facilities, more encouragement to stay there. And in the placemaking world, it's called being sticky. So people have a reason to go there, and then they have a reason to stay there. Some of the most popular single item, and probably no surprise, was a pier. I mean, we've all been to, whether it be Santa Barbara, whether it be Sydney, we've all been to places where they have a wonderful pier that people like to go, sit at, fish off, walk, talk, meet people. So that was one of the ones that was enormously popular. Again, the gathering spots. And we know that there is, with the Arts Laureate, Barbara Adams, I believe there's some discussion around creating sort of an area there that people can come and perform. And this would just, we're just thinking of ideas of how can we expand on that and utilize that whole space. These are, again, just ideas, but they're around. I mean, they're in Vancouver, they're at, what was the? Top left hand is New Westminster. Right. Yeah. And as we know, with our Oak Bay markets, food is a huge draw. It is for me. But one of the things that people were looking for was maybe a farmer's market. And I realized, and I'm not trying to stay away from the planning just as much as I like it, in there is an ability to have, I think it's a 5-hour farmer's market or something on these lands. And so that was one of the things that people came up with. That would be a great idea. It's usually vacant, and if it's early on a Sunday or early on a Saturday, it'd be a great opportunity for people to walk down there and create some sort of a food event around a farmer's market. There's a picture here that actually came out of our workshop. There was a lot of discussion about we should go use it now. We should use Turkey Head now. And it was right before Canada Day. And so they put out a little thing, and there was a number of people that just showed up. And this was obviously free. You could bring your own lawn chair. There was some music provided. They sang "Oh Canada." And it was that. This, I think, is sort of the start of how people are going to start to look at Turkey Head and underutilized public spaces. As Andrew spoke about the interpretation of Spuhung in terms of the First Nations heritage here, the historical with the boathouse. We could do the facilities, signage, the importance of the Salish Sea. The environment is also very significant, and this is a great space to be utilizing that. Again, the Oak Bay Boathouse, which we've had discussions. It was interesting to have some discussions. We had people from the archives that came to our presentation as well and our workshop, and they brought a whole bunch of other pictures. And there were people there that actually remember going down there as kids and hanging out and understanding what the history of this place is. Okay, so we had to throw in something about the OCP. So this is just one of the objectives. I think we've put in a number of the other ones that we have. There's a lot of relevant references that if you wanted to look to the OCP to give you some guidance, it's there. But what this area has is potential. It builds strong relationships and partnerships. It's educational. There's a First Nations relations and heritage, arts and culture part. There's nature interpretation, heritage, tourism, recreation, builds community. I could go on, but there's a lot of potential for this area. What I know there was in your strategic priorities, there was a bit to look at the bylaws for this area. What the community association and Andrew's group would like to do is sort of encourage you to put this back on the strategic priorities in terms of looking at this. And we realize that the lease is not up till 2022, but I think the interest is out there to, if you're going to do something, there's a lot of momentum there to say, okay, let's open it up wide to look what the opportunities are. And as a community association and the Greater Victoria Placemaking, we will continue to dialogue with people because there is an interest on this. Just like to thank you, and thank you for taking the time. I got a minute. I'm in. Thank you to staff for helping us to set this up and get you the information. We really appreciate that. We are around if you have a few questions. I'd like to wish you all the best over the holidays and next year, and we'll probably be back next year. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and congratulations for making it under 10 minutes. I just have a question to staff. The bylaws that we did change at Turkey Head earlier this year, that I believe was to allow us to have different functions on that area, because I know that the Marina and the Oak Bay Sea Rescue Group had a great event on that area in the summer, I believe. And I think that's one of the reasons that we worked very hard to try and get those bylaws changed so that we could have events such as a farmer's market or a art show or whatever it might happen to be on that area, because we would like to utilize it a little bit more. So that was the correct bylaw that we had changed, right? I know I rambled on, I'm sorry.
I thought if you went on long enough, you'd answer your own questions. So, yeah, and I think if I remember correctly, too, it was also to permit the
bicycle rentals. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any questions from committee? Nope, seeing none. Any input from the public? One at the very back. If you can just state your name and area where you live, that would be great. Sure. Mr. Dewhurst.
My name is Stacy Dewhurst, and I live directly across from Turkey Head. And to me, Turkey Head, and I'm a new resident there, so we've been walking the dog around Turkey Head, and every third Sunday in the summer there's an impromptu cars and coffee event that takes place there. But I've never thought of that space as anything other than belonging to the Oak Bay Marina. I didn't know that that wasn't the case. And I think these guys are right on track with the ideas of what else could be done with that space on a pop-up basis maybe. And I'd be excited to participate in that. It's a great spot, and I think we could do a lot better than just a little walkway, which is great, but there's a lot of empty space there. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll look for funding too. Oh, did I say that out loud? Anyone else?
Jacques Sirois, St. Patrick Street in Oak Bay. I think we have the potential here to have one of the coolest public spaces in Greater Victoria. The stories to be told there are amazing and of national significance. The story of Fenwick Lansdowne and his art. The story, first and foremost, of Pacific Sealand of the Pacific, what happened there, and what it led to in terms of a paradigm shift in how we understand whales. The story of each whale that was there is just fantastic. So I really hope to see something cool develop at Turkey Head. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will look for a motion to so Kathleen.
Kathleen Matthews again, 1180. I too live very close to Turkey Head, and we go there quite often. I worry about a little bit of overdevelopment and the impact on the shoreline. And also, there are some pretty neat little flowers and plants along there that I happen to enjoy. So as much as I think I commend all the work you're doing and stuff, but if just is that we can just also not only, I mean, it's more than just the view. The ecology itself on the space is something I think to think about, even though it's basically a parking lot. Some things have survived, and I think the green space that whatever we do, we don't impact the birds and the shoreline, and there's so much work about how best to maintain a shoreline. So I just add that to the pot. Sorry.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to, I guess, receive for information.
Second.
Okay. Any further comments, questions, Councillor Murdoch?
Just one very quick comment. I think the ideas here are very interesting, and I think that space as a dynamic and open space for people to use is excellent. I think I don't think anybody would argue with that. We're probably not doing a lot of driving that from this table as of today. But I would say, though, that it does highlight, as again, that lease is coming up in 5 years. It's a 30-year lease. It has been for the last 2 times. We are going to have to start addressing the future of that space sooner rather than later as a body, because that is a council piece, and it's going to be in partnership with Oak Bay Marina and other bodies, because that really will determine what things like piers, those sorts of things, are not part of this, but may well be part of that longer 30-plus year vision for what we want to do down there. And sorry, I have a cold, so this is what my voice is going to sound like tonight.
Thank you. So no further comments. I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your presentation. Okay, item number 3 is the application for Heritage Revitalization Agreement at 960 Foul Bay Road. I believe that we're going to have an overview from our Acting Director of Building and Planning, Ms. Jensen, and then we'll take any committees or questions from this to the staff. Ms. Jensen.
Thank you. So this application was originally presented to the Committee of the Whole in September, where the applicant proposed a 5-lot subdivision that included a heritage designation of the existing home, which would be moved to the corner lot. Following discussion at the committee meeting, the applicant has modified the proposal to a 4-lot subdivision. The heritage designated home would still be moved to the corner lot, with greater yard space provided to the north and south of the home, giving a bit more of a presence on the site, and additional parking provided for the heritage home as well. Other revisions to the proposal include increased lot depth for the 2 lots facing Brighton Avenue, which provides for additional green space in the rear yards, and providing additional distance between the existing home to the west of the lot along Brighton Avenue and the proposed new home on Lot 1. The revised layout does result in some modifications to the variances that were originally discussed, and those would be laid out in the Heritage Revitalization Agreement as well.
Thank you. So questions from committee? We'll have the presentation if you have any questions to staff, or would you like the presentation first? Okay, so Mr. Dewhurst, if you'd like to come forward for your presentation.
Hi again. I'm Stacy Dewhurst, and I'm the owner of 960 Foul Bay Road. Thank you for the opportunity to come back and talk with you about our revised plan. The last time we were here, we got quite a bit of input and feedback from yourselves, as well as a couple of members of the public, our neighbors. So we took the time to really look at this site and try to determine what we could do to address those concerns. So the two main things that we heard was there was too much density, and that the mansion was being proposed to be on too small of a lot. In fact, we heard someone use the word compromised. They felt it looked compromised on its site. So what we did is we eliminated one of the lots that was on Foul Bay Road, and we designated the majority of that land to the mansion. So the mansion is now sitting on a 12 or 13,000 square foot lot. So we have an estate-sized lot for an estate-sized home. And further, we were able to move the mansion back from the street to create a proper 25-foot setback. And at the same time, we were able to create 5 off-street parking spots. And if you remember, we had a fellow speak against the proposal who is our immediate neighbor across Brighton, and his concerns were parking related. I've gone over this new proposal with him and his wife. They fully endorse it, and they've signed a letter to that effect. So very pleased with it. A knock-on effect of having eliminated that middle lot is that originally we were looking at losing 9 trees on this site. We're now down to losing 2 trees, and most significantly, there is a signature oak tree currently right in front of the mansion that was going to be in the building envelope of the lot we eliminated. So saving that tree is a big deal, and in collaboration with our arborist, we've learned that we can meet or exceed the canopy coverage requirements by the city on all of these 4 lots. The other thing we also tried a number of other things, because from this group we did hear some ideas of more density, we heard less density, and we did try some other ideas. We tried a multifamily building on one of the lots, and the neighbors did not care for that in the least, because it involved a large parking area which would go in the rear of what is now currently green space. So we thought eliminating one of the lots, going with 4 lots, made sense from a density standpoint. And then we have our neighbor to the west, if I can... If it was a Mac, I'd know my way around. Oh, thank you. Great. So there's a revised site plan showing the mansion on a much more appropriate lot with its 5 parking spots, and immediately behind the mansion, that large canopy circle is that signature oak tree that I'm talking about. So the other thing we did, as Deborah mentioned, is we extended the 2 Brighton Street lots all the way to the back of the property line and shortened up the remaining lot on Foul Bay. You'll remember that lot used to go all the way back, and its building lot involved the removal of those large perimeter trees on that property line. That's no longer the case. So then we asked ourselves, we have this one neighbor immediately to the west of us who spoke last time and had concerns about loss of sunlight, overshadowing, losing their sky, and some parking concerns, and those are all valid concerns. And so we thought, well, how do we mitigate or minimize or eliminate those? So what we did is that lot on the far right there, which is our westerlymost lot, which immediately bounds their property, we've gone from a 5-foot minimum side yard setback to a 15-foot side yard setback. And combined with their 25-foot rear yard setback, we now have 40 feet between the 2 houses. Now, the midpoint of our roof, the top of our roof, cannot be more than 28 feet above grade, and that is an additional 17 feet away from them. So the top of our house will be 57 feet from them. We've also committed to them that there will be no driveways or cars going up and down that widened side yard. We'll keep all traffic out of there and keep it at going into the single car garage and the existing driveway as shown. We've committed to them that we'll build a new 6-foot high fence complete with landscape screening to further protect their privacy. We have agreed to collaborate with them on the design of this particular home so that the side of the house that faces them, we've committed that we will not have any windows that open on habitable rooms, in other words, bedroom windows. We may have some high piano windows, we may have a laundry room or a frosted bathroom window that faces them, but we won't have anything else that allows anyone to overlook or impact their privacy. And we look forward to working with them on the design to ensure they're happy with that. The other commitments we've made around this particular situation is we've agreed that both those homes on Brighton Street will not have any layouts in the lower level that would lend themselves to suiting them. There'll be no infrastructure or hidden wiring in the walls. The homes will not be marketed or promoted as having suites. And this should eliminate the neighbors' concerns about future overflow parking, which I think was a big item for them. The parking, as you can see, we have a 25-foot front setback, so we have a 25-foot driveway, a single car garage, and then we have an additional 30 feet of driveway that'll come out over the boulevard. So I'm convinced that there'll be no reason a homeowner there will ever need to park their car around the corner in front of this neighbor's house. So I think we've solved that. And then the final point that was brought up by council in a roundabout way was the idea of maybe a sunshade study. And so we took that upon ourselves and we contracted out of Vancouver for a sunshade study, particularly for their home. And I've shared that sunshade study with them, and it's unequivocal. There's not a day in the year that there's any loss of sunlight or overshadowing. So I feel that we've gone over and above to meet the concerns of these neighbors. I met with them a couple of times recently. I like them a lot, and I hope that they feel that we've done a lot to address their concerns. So to sum up, I think we've gone in the right direction, going from 5 lots to 4. We are intending to register and designate and restore and retain that important Samuel McClure home. We are committed to doing all of the significant sidewalk, curb and gutter, and boulevard enhancements. And I think all of these things combined really make for a reference standard development. It's going to be a showpiece, and it's going to be a community amenity in terms of saving this home. And I think it's going to be a big benefit to the neighbors with the new boulevard and whatnot. And I hope for your support so we can move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Dewhurst. Any questions from committee for Mr. Dewhurst or for staff? Councillor Murdoch.
The only question I have really is just, you clarified a number of them, was just the 5 parking spots. Were any of those covered, or are they all uncovered parking spots for the heritage home?
They're all surface.
Okay. I guess I could have a carport or something attached at some future point, but that's not the plan right now?
That's not the plan at the moment, but the parking, the 3 spots that are just tucked in behind there, you certainly could have a carport. You could design something that was complementary to the mansion. You could.
Thank you.
Councillor Croft.
Thank you, through you. Chair, the original proposal was that the heritage home would have 2 suites, but that you weren't going to complete them. Are you planning to complete those suites now, or will it still stay unfinished on the lower level?
That's a great question. I think what I've heard from planning and different conversations with council is the suites ought to be completed at the point we relocate the house and do the work. And then this economic engine is there, whether the new homeowner uses it or not. But as part of this HRA process, when we go through that, I'm happy to take direction from you on it. I mean, it would make sense to do it all at the same time.
Okay, Mayor Jensen.
Thank you. I'm familiar with a couple of your other projects, Mr. Dewhurst, and I have an acquaintance who lives in the one that you restored on just off of Linden and McClure. and that was a conversion.
Yes,
So you took a large house and you made it into 4 sizable suites. I'm also familiar with the building you're currently building. I think the name of the street, Southgate.
Yes, sir.
And that is a 6-plex, is it?
Yes, sir.
So did you give thought to using those kind of techniques on this lot? Because that's one of the things that certainly that came up in council discussions as to that this lot, this area, while not necessarily wanting to have more houses, but having suites or conversions of the main mansion as a possibility, or as you're doing on Southgate, having a 6-plex,
Yes.
which can be made to look like a single-family dwelling or original. So what thought, if any, did you give to that as an approach to this piece of land?
Well, we heard that message at our last meeting, and we gave a lot of thought to it and spent about $3,000 with Zebra Designs doing up a site plan, which showed on the Foul Bay lot, that remaining lot, that exact building, Mr. Mayor, you're referencing at 1016 Southgate Street. So we parachuted the building there, complete with the parking and everything else. I brought it in and showed it to Deborah Jensen. And I went around and began to show it to the neighbors. And we have 11 neighbors, immediate neighbors. And I didn't get very far because, to me, it's a great idea. I would like to have 3 6-plexes there, just like Southgate. It'd be wonderful. The problem is you have to put a driveway down that side. We're going to lose all those perimeter trees. And then, of course, we have to have 6 parking spots plus 2 visitor spots. So we really have a parking lot. And the neighbors had this vision in their head that, well, we're going to have cars going up and down. We're going to have them warming up in the winter. They're going to be headlights coming in at night. And it wasn't going to fly with this group of neighbors. It's a terrific idea, and I think the site should have a lot more density. But I've gotten to know all of these neighbors. We have 11 neighbors, affected immediate neighbors. 2 of them, the homes, they don't live there. The homes are abandoned. They've never met anybody. So we have 9 neighbors that I've communicated with. 7 of them have signed letters of support. 1 of them has indicated verbal support, and we have the remaining neighbor who I'm addressing tonight with the changes we've made. So yes, to answer your question, we put time and money into it. I would love to do that. But I wouldn't have any support from the neighbors for that.
Any further questions, Mayor Jensen? No?
Nope, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, I have a few questions. The current use of the mansion is it suites or what is it?
It's a single-family dwelling with an illegal suite in a portion of the basement, and another illegal suite above the garage, and a de facto kind of illegal suite in the attic, where Mrs. Henderson, the previous owner, had tried to generate these income streams because she didn't have any income.
Right. The only reason I ask is because I went and walked the site yesterday, and there was at least 12 cars parked on that site.
Yes, it is a deteriorating situation. This group of tenants, I've had them for 5 years. They came from the property on Southgate Street. There seems to be more of them moving in. Their tenancy is up at the end of this month, and so we either have the option of not renewing their tenancy as we move forward with this project, or if we're not moving forward with it, I have to renew the tenancy. We go from there and we go to Plan B. But it is not a tenable situation, and I'm aware of it.
Because there is a bylaw that you're aware of that you
Yes.
can't have more than 3 unrelated people living in a house, correct? Is that not our bylaw? Yeah, okay. So just that you're aware of that. So my other question would be, I looked at the condition of the house, and I mean, you would know this way better than me, but is the condition of that house conducive to being able to be moved in that, from where it sits right now to this without being damaged? Because that would be my worry, is that it would get damaged.
Well, again, that's a very good question, and we've spoken with two of the different house moving companies in town, and for them it's a no-brainer. That is the way they've said it. They simply put in their I-beams, they lift it, they turn it, and they relocate it once we have a new foundation. We will probably get a bit of these old houses settle over time, so when they straighten them, they crack, and so we have to go in and do drywall repair. But the home will be as good as new when we're finished with it.
Okay, because I mean, my worry would be that what would happen if something tragic happened to that house when it was moved,
Right.
and you were unable to. I mean, you'd have to demolish it,
Yes.
and then I mean that lot there, that lot number 3, is then a very large lot, and then would you be looking to then come back and what would happen to the I guess for staff, what would happen to the HRA if that happened?
The revitalization agreement itself would have a list of conditions in it as to work that needed to be done to go through with the 5-lot subdivision. So I would anticipate the first thing we would do is look at having that house moved and repaired before any further development happens on the site. So if the house was not brought up to its standard as per the conditions in the revitalization agreement, then the agreement would be null and void.
Okay, so, but again, my question would be, if that house was not available to be there, then would Mr. Dewhurst not be able to come back and ask for 5 lots on there, because it would not have to hold that mansion anymore? He could go to a smaller lot, could he not? Because how big did you say that lot was?
It's about 12,500 square feet.
So 12 and a half, so it could go to 2 other lots, I would suppose.
If I may, but the subdivision would not necessarily be complete yet. He could move the house. It's still on 1 lot before the other lots had actually been created.
Okay, thank you. I just was not aware of what would happen if that came through. My other thing is, I really appreciate everything that you've done so far to try and make this, to me, a more reasonable subdivision. I do look at the 2. I look at Brighton Avenue, and I look at the sidewalk that you're considering putting in. And when you look at Brighton, it's such a skinny road. It's a very skinny road already, right? And really, there's no place here for people to park. I don't believe there's any parking on that side of Brighton or the other side of Brighton. Is that correct?
There's none permitted currently.
Non-permitted. So I was thinking about it when I was walking down, and I thought, what would happen if you moved the sidewalk in a little bit? To make onto the boulevard, to make the road a little bit wider. And by doing that, then perhaps what you could do is you could push the 2 houses on lot 1 and 2, 10 feet further back on the lot. That would then open it up a little bit more in the front. And then also there's a big rock, I believe, on the side of lot 1.
Yes.
That it looks almost like it encroaches onto the house or where the house is proposing to be. So that might give a little bit more room to save that rock, because I'm not sure whether your plan was to save that rock or not.
I think our plan now is to save that rock, and the rock actually goes over the property line of the neighbors. So I think we're all in agreement we'd like to save the rock. I only put the sidewalk there because the neighbors don't want any parking on Brighton. Well, it's deceptively skinny but anyway, they just, for whatever reason, they don't want any parking on the street. So, but I would be happy to, as you said, I mean, you could put a couple of pull-ins there, sure, and anything really.
So I mean, if something like that happened, then would you be willing to push the 2 houses further back in the lot?
I think the challenge, the challenge is the further the homes go back, the more they would impact these 2 neighbors to the west of us, because they, again, have the potential to possibly block sun the further south the houses go. And the houses already have a 25-foot setback plus this additional 30-foot setback with the wide boulevard. So they'll already have the impression that they're quite a ways back. But I would work with engineering when it comes time to design this boulevard, sidewalk, curb, and gutter, certainly to whatever standards that they wanted or were directed to.
Thanks. And my last question is, are you actually, you talked a lot about your commitment to what you're going to build on those lots. So are you basically saying that you definitely are the one who will be building on those lots, or are those lots, could those lots go up for sale so someone else would build there?
Either of those things are possible, but with the design of these homes and the size and the scale and the finishes of these homes going to be locked in with the HRA, if we did sell the lots, whoever bought the lots would be compelled to build that exact home. But my goal is to do the whole project. I mentioned that before. Mr. Mayor has mentioned a couple of my sites. I have a number of them. I'm extremely proud of all of them. This is a legacy site for me. I want my name attached to this, and I'm going to do the whole project. It's going to be great.
Okay, so because that was a concern to me. Like, it's great that you would have these commitments, but if you were not the one to build that, or once it's sold, I mean, even though you've committed to not have windows on that side of the house, is there something that whoever owns that house, could they then go and change that? And I'm not sure if that's covered in the agreement or not, Ms. Jensen, where they couldn't perhaps go in and put a bank of windows along that one wall, for example.
So with the Heritage Revitalization Agreement, we would be looking at the design of those houses locked in as part of the agreement.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay. Mayor Jensen.
Thank you. Sorry. Just wanted to clarify something earlier said that I've been thinking about the main house. And that is, you would prefer, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you would prefer to have it as a 3-unit accommodations. And you would, even if you don't prefer, that's something you would be able to live with, if that's one of the requirements of the HRA.
Well, I envision the home as being a single-family dwelling with 2 legal suites in the lower level, with another portion of the lower level dedicated to the homeowner for a rec room or something like that. So it's a single-family home with 2 legal suites.
So you would not be open to the idea of at the outset having it as 3 residences?
Do you mean taking...
Much like you have the one on McClure, which is 4. But this one here would be 3.
Right. And the home would actually... The reason I didn't want to do a conversion to the inside of this home is it has a beautiful McClure foyer and a staircase and a square. I'd have to show it to you. But it doesn't really lend itself to conversion. But when you do a conversion, you do have to gut the home down to the studs. Everything comes out. And so we would lose all of that interior, but we could then rebuild it in any way we want. And we could easily get 6 or possibly 7 nice conversion units in there while it still looks like a single-family dwelling. But again, we're going to have parking issues, and this group of neighbors that I've gotten to know so well, our density and parking is a big deal for them.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so if there's no further questions from the committee, then I'm going to go to the public.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Dewhurst,
Thank
thank
you
you so much. So anyone from the public who'd like to come up and ask a question? Thank you. If you can just introduce yourself.
John Armitage, Victoria Avenue. My only comment on this is, I haven't heard it this evening, but I think there should be some recognition from the proponent, from council, from staff, about the importance of the Brighton corridor. I won't call it a walkway because it's very busy with cyclists also. And this is right in the middle, the crucial part of it, from Richmond ultimately to Windsor Avenue at the very bottom end. And I use it daily, and I'm very grateful for the pedestrian crossing, which at times I've shared with the local buck. They wander through there, they own the place. But anyway, it's a vital, priceless part of our cross-border infrastructure, is the semi-unstructured nature of that whole corridor. The mud that happens at that property is unfortunate, but it would be equally unfortunate to overdevelop with too much curb and guttering. So I know that a lot of it is beyond this council's control because it's a neighbouring municipality. But I just think all of that should be taken into consideration also. And just exactly what flows from that, I don't know. But that's all I wish to say on this matter.
Thank you so much, Mr. Armitage. Anyone else?
Just before we move on, just to the point raised, maybe I think it can be turned into a question to Ms. Jensen. This particular portion we're dealing with is all within our jurisdiction, Ms. Jensen. And Victoria, in other words, we would control the curb and gutter on the property as we see it here?
Correct.
Right, and it's really to the west that Victoria then has jurisdiction, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to come up and speak? If you could just state your name and the area that you live, please.
Wendy Cornock, and I am at 995 Brighton Crescent, and we are the neighbors to the west, which border Lot 1 on the site map there. So I just want to first say that this is a very much improved plan than what was presented the last time, and I appreciate the work that Stacey has done to address some of our concerns. But I don't think, as much as we appreciate everything, I think we do still have some concerns. And some of the things that Stacey talked about, we haven't actually connected. So in regards to parking on Brighton, that actually is a concern of mine. I do want parking. I think that it is a very narrow street, and I actually really appreciate what Hazel suggested. It's a narrow street, lots of deer. You come off Foul Bay, you have to be pretty darn careful. And when there are homes of this size, and Stacey didn't talk about the size of the houses, lot 1 and 2 are, I believe, planned to be around the 24 to 2,700 square foot homes with a single car garage and possibly basements as well. And lots of people, as in the people that currently are living in the house, have more than one car. And they also have people come to visit. So they do need a place to park. There's no parking on Foul Bay. And it is difficult, as we heard before, with bylaw officers being able to actually do something. So I see, and what is now the case is there's no place to park, so people park where they're not allowed. And it is narrow, and I see that that's a problem waiting to happen. It is the Brighton corridor. There is a lot of cyclists. There is a lot of people walking there. So I would much prefer that there be some place for people to come and visit and be able to park their car, because they do travel there. And I do like Hazel's plan in moving the house back that borders us. You can't really see on the plan the property line, and Stacey's aware of this. One of the biggest concerns we have is we don't have a wide back yard, so it's 25 feet. That's not huge. And with the house being behind us, all of our windows, my kitchen, everything now will not look at sky, but will look at a wall of a house. The house is planned to still be, I'm quoting numbers that Stacey has and I don't have, but like 28 feet. You can't see how the land goes there, but it's not flat. So my backyard is considerably lower than their backyard. So the 28 feet, it feels like a lot more when you're looking at it from my yard, which is going up. So I don't need the whole yard. I understand that we need some density, but if that house moved back, I could look out my kitchen window at sky rather than looking out, because right now it goes from property line all the way to the back of our fence. So if it was like moved halfway back, it would impact a little bit on the neighbor's view, but they'd still have view, and it would still impact when we're sitting in our backyard, but I'd still have view from the kitchen. So I appreciate what's been done, but I think that this is a time to look at it all and to come up with something that's best for the neighborhood in the long term. I actually, again, haven't talked to Stacy about a 6-unit as an option. And Mayor Jensen has said 3 units. I mean, 3 units is fine with me, but we didn't talk about that. But what concerns me right now with it being not a conversion and being single is there are plans that were attached to this, and there's the 2 suites, but it's also a 6-bedroom house, plus 2, is it a den and an office, Stacy? A couple of offices? Like, there's a lot of rooms potentially as bedrooms. And I don't see that single family ownership of that main house needing 6 bedrooms plus that many offices when they're a single family. They might be a multifamily joining together. It just seems like a lot of space. And 6 units would be a lot of space for me too. I think that I would not be happy about that. But right now it's proposed as a 3-unit, but it doesn't seem like 3 units when you count in the number of bedrooms. So again, that extra traffic and the extra density. Foul Bay is a road that is windy there. The sidewalk really helps. It's new. People don't necessarily stop for it. It's 40 kilometers along there. It's hard to see people come along there at that 50, 60, and they're coming around the corner and you don't see them till they're there. So I know it's difficult. I often, in the morning, don't go out Foul Bay. I have to take the roundabout way because it can be a little bit dangerous, especially in the winter. I know we don't really have winter here, but it's icy. You need to make sure you can get out on the road quickly. So as much as I think that there's been a lot of really positive things with this plan, I think there's still a few things that I just have a little bit of concerns with. I feel, that there's a lot to say, well done, but I think there might still be a little bit of work to look at it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One question that came out of that for me would be, I don't think we did determine how big the houses were on lots 1, 2, and 4 were being proposed to be. I think it was bandied about that there might be 2,400 square feet. Is that correct, Mr. Dewhurst?
Yes, they'll be somewhere between 2,400 to 2,700 square feet and may or may not have basements depending on the topography.
Okay, so 2,400 plus a basement if it's going to be there. Okay. Yeah. And just another question. It was mentioned that your land is higher than the land next door. Is it what is the difference between?
There's no difference in grade between their lot and this lot. The grade starts to change if we're looking at the middle lot. About the middle of the middle lot, the grade starts to go up at maybe 2%.
Thank you. Anyone else want to come forward from the public? Just state your name and your...
Hi, Curtis Hobson. I live in Oak Bay. A couple things. The significant tree, I'm just wondering about the root zone of that tree. As we found out with the quest, the root zone is very important, and I can see the canopy, the house infringing on the canopy, but I don't know about the root zone, so that might be a question to investigate. Further to Councillor Braithwaite's suggestion or fear, I guess, of a catastrophic failure in moving the house, I'm wondering if a request for a bond of some sort might be appropriate. And finally, I see a single-family mansion lot turned into 4 lots, well, 3 additional lots, and wonder, it's a rezoning windfall for Mr. Dewhurst for the fact that he is going to build 3 houses, which will probably sell for well over $1 million. I do understand the risk involved in development, but I guess my question would be what cut does the municipality get out of that? Thanks.
Well, no cut. Other than increased tax base, I would imagine, and there has been talk of the new sidewalk being put in. So, Councillor Ney, did you have a comment?
It's an HRA, so what the municipality gets in return is the preservation of a heritage house, which is part of our strategic plan in preserving heritage house, and it's a way to do that.
Okay. Anyone else from the public like to come forward? Okay, so any further discussion around the table? Councillor Murdoch.
Thank you, through you, Chair. A couple of things I think should be pointed out. As Councillor Ney mentioned, the heritage aspect of this house, while not registered or designated, is an important aspect. It's got a lot of cultural history to the community, and it's got a lot of architectural value and so forth in and of itself. So in my role as liaison for heritage, I think it's incumbent upon me just to point out the fact that they were very, very supportive of anything that could be done in this process to save that house. Two primary concerns were, one, moving it at all, because that's sort of in the heritage world, you try not to move, but if moved, then to keep some sense of space around the house and apply green space and so forth. So just from the perspective of a heritage view of this, I think the revised version in front of us achieves those goals quite nicely. It puts the house back into better space, better setbacks, better mature trees and so forth around it to kind of protect it, so, and to frame it. So I think that's very positive. There's certainly, nothing's perfect. There's aspects of this that could be better. I actually think, in many ways that more density in this site is appropriate. I think probably if we had a housing plan, it would probably flag this as one of those places that we could actually get some more density and find matches to that to the neighbors. But we don't have that. We have an application in front of us right now from Mr. Dewhurst to put forward 3 new houses, 2 suites, plus the restoration of this beautiful heritage house. So looking at the application that's in front of us, I'd have a hard time saying there's anything here that would flag it for me to not approve it. The idea of moving that most westerly house back, I think, in the end would actually be a negative to the neighbors. That it does move it further south. So the further south you go, the more light it catches, and the shading settings are very clear. It's not going to cast much of a shadow, of any shadow at all, but even if it did, it would block more. And the houses are offset, looking at the site views, that that 25-foot setback seems to be reasonable. I think that the questions about parking are very reasonable. I think that's something that staff, engineering, and the applicant can work on. It would be nice to see some appropriate parking in that street if it's possible. Whether that's moving the sidewalk in or whatever, I think that's beyond the pale of this. It's an offer given by the applicant to help with that, but the details of that to be determined. It's nice to see the increase in parking. I don't know that we're going to need the 5 parking spots for that, but it's good to have it there. Certainly appreciate the reduction of the floor area ratio and the lot coverage on these. And I have to just also acknowledge, one of my pet peeves is so many developments coming forward are built to the absolute maximum size on every lot. Which is detrimental in all kinds of ways, not just to the green space, but it makes it very difficult if people do want to make some reasonable changes to the house in 30 or 50 years. You can't do it because everything's built to the max. So all the buildings here do breathe quite nicely on the space. So I think all things being considered, just in my comments here, what I've seen so far and what I've heard, I'm fairly supportive of this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments? Councillor Ney.
I actually don't disagree with much of what you're saying, Councillor Murdoch. I really appreciate how the applicant has gone back and worked closely with the residents and revised the application accordingly. On the point that's been brought to our attention around the Lot 1 and it causing a problem for the westerly neighbor on 955 Brighton. The way it looks to me here is it actually looks like 955 is up above based on the grade diagram here, but I can appreciate why the way you've described it, that you're going to see the house, because yours is lower and the house goes higher than where you are, but it looks like the land goes higher. But that said, though you have a 25 foot backyard, and then the applicant has increased the setback on the side to 50, and that adds up to 40 foot between your house and the others. And the other thing I like about what the applicant has done on lot 1 is it's the way the house roof line angles down and is softened. And my hunch is that as you get your vegetation and trees in, that sight line will be softened. So I'm happy with how the applicant has tried to maneuver the building on that lot to address 955. I think it looks good. So overall, I think there's a lot of changes that have been made here, and I think it's good to go at this point from my perspective.
Thank you. Is that a motion or?
I'll move recommendation to council.
Thanks. I'll just make one comment, if I might, unless you have a comment, Councillor Croft. No? No. I totally hear what you guys are saying about Lot 1 and about how this development in its proposed state is far better than what was brought to us before. I would still like to see those houses pushed back a little bit. I just think it would lend itself to being a little bit of a good neighbor on that side, and it would really protect that rock, because it is a fairly substantial rock that's in between 995 Brighton and proposed Lot 1. And I would like to see something done about perhaps parking along that boulevard. So if the sidewalk could go on the boulevard and have a little bit of a parking area there, I think that would really help as well. I think it would help alleviate some of the concerns of the neighbors around parking. So those would be my comments on that. So any other comments? Mayor Jansen.
I think what Mr. Dewhurst has done here is certainly a market change from the last one. I would have liked to have seen more multifamily dwelling attempted on here. He rejected it based on what the neighbors had to say. I think it's still possible. Having said that, it's certainly a step up from what we saw last time. One of the things that I also heard, though, is that the suites that are in the main house are optional. Certainly for my part, although we're not at that stage yet, but when the HRA agreement comes forward, that's one of the things that I would look for to make sure that the suites are put in there. They provide good diversity of housing for our residents. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dewhurst. Item number 4 is under regulatory items, and the first item there is single-use checkout bag regulations. I think we'll have an overview from the Director of Corporate Services, and then we'll have some questions. Ms. Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to offer the Director's apologies. He wasn't able to attend this evening. However, I'll give a very brief overview of his report. The committee will see that there is correspondence from the City of Victoria and the CRD included on the agenda. This is with respect to the question of single-use checkout bags. Ultimately, the correspondence is there before the committee for comment as to whether this is a source of interest to the committee. However, it is important to note that the introductions to restrict the use of single plastic and or checkout bags is not currently within the district's work plan.
Thank you so much. Questions, Mayor Jensen?
It's not so much a question, it was just a comment and an idea. The City of Victoria is moving ahead with not with a bylaw that deals with single-use plastic bags, which is a little bit different in a number of important ways than what the model bylaw was. They're talking about minimum pricing for certain alternatives to single use. And so and this is what they say they want to implement after looking at other jurisdictions. So whether or not it's going to be successful is something that we perhaps want to allow them to find out before we go down the road of looking at this. It's going to take a number of consultations from the City of Victoria, bringing all the businesses on board, because this is a significant change for a lot of businesses. So, for instance, Fairways, that is in Victoria, is in Saanich, and in Oak Bay, will have to make a significant amount of adjustments. One can presume if they're going to make those adjustments in Victoria, that they'll do the same thing here in Oak Bay. So there may be some others that just out of looking at what's happening elsewhere in the region, will also go and move away from single-use plastic bags, perhaps some of the pharmacies or whatever. So probably the best thing for us to do at this point is to wait and see. Wait and see, first of all, the final product that goes forward in the City of Victoria. I spoke to Mayor Helps, and they will take they will have a review some year to 2 years after the bylaw goes in, and that will allow us, if we continue to monitor their success or lack thereof, before we embark. So, I mean, it's very kind of them to be kind of like the regional guinea pigs. At the CRD level, I was certainly hopeful that there will be a single bylaw for all of CRD, so that there's no differentiations. Unfortunately, the legal advice that was received at the CRD was that that's not possible. There's no jurisdiction for that in the CRD, because this amounts to business regulation, which is not right now within the mandate of the CRD. I found that a little bit surprising, because protecting the environment, solid waste, all of that is within that. So, but that's the advice, and that was what was accepted, and that's why the model bylaw has gone out in the way it has. So I think one of the things that we may want to think about is putting it over and bringing it back on the agenda at some point when we know that the City of Victoria has done a review. I think that would probably be the time for us to get involved. So, as opposed to just sending it to a priority session, because sending it to a priority session is saying that we're going to go down this road. But unless we know what the road looks like, we probably shouldn't do that. So that's a thought that I have. And at the same time, I know we have a BIA liaison that perhaps we can encourage either informally or through a motion to take this issue to the BIA for all of the businesses to look at voluntary compliance with moving away from the single-use plastic. Thank you.
I think that's something that the BIA is already talking about already. So anyone else have any comments?
Yeah, and to that, the BIA did receive a presentation by the same surf rider organization that we did, and you walk through this municipality and you look at the number of plastic bags in the street. If this was 10 years ago, we had plastic bags in trees and plastic bags on the street. It strikes me that a lot of what has happened over the last 10, 15 years is education, and people are recycling their plastic bags on their own. And we do know that Fairways and other places in the community have great recycling of plastic bags, as does our dump. So part of this is more education than going after the people who are using the bags. And you see it all the time at the counter, where people bring their own bags and use them now. And it's just it's a process of which people are learning to take their own bags to the stores.
Thank you. Councillor Ney.
I guess what I'd just like to add is, the idea, I support what the mayor's suggesting here, that we move along a little bit slower, wait and see if they can collect the evidence to show that it's changing consumer behavior and reducing the carry-out consumption in the businesses. But I would like to send the message, and just to support what Councillor Croft is saying, is that and Councillor Braithwaite, who's working with the BIA, if they really can work with the businesses to promote the reduction of that carry-out consumption in a way, because I think that educative approach is probably more appropriate at this time than a regulatory approach.
Thank you.
If that's the case, then we're going to wait and see. Is the motion to receive this the best way forward? Is that? I'm getting nods, so I'll make that motion.
Seconded.
And I would just add, yeah, I support what's been said here. I think I think this is a not. I've read the City of Victoria's bylaw, and I'm not crazy about it. I think it goes into a lot of detail that isn't helpful. It eliminates from its regulations a lot of the single-use plastic bag for things like wrapping vegetables and wrapping meat and all the other pieces. So, you know, the actual amount of stuff what it's going to address is probably not that significant, and so I'm curious to see what comes out of it. So I'm quite happy with this. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm just going to go to the public to see if the public has any comment on this. Seeing no one, then I will call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. Thank you. And item number 5 under regulatory items is the Mayor's Task Force on Community Engagement. And I'm going to turn that over to Councillor Croft.
Thank you, Chair. This has been an interesting task force comprised of public member Jan Mears and Councillor Zelka and myself. And we're kind of pleased to present our final report called Achieving Transparency. This report has been provided for information purposes only. As you know, we did a presentation, and we've been working for some time to try and coalesce this report into something that would be satisfactory to the task force. And it was interesting that when the motion was made to have a public forum, it kind of engaged us into a situation where we felt that we then could complete this report if we had a community engagement around community engagement. The practice of community engagement has moved dramatically from the 2012 task force report and our initial report in 2016. It is because of these changes that the committee has had some challenges. In many ways, the task force has been playing catch-up to the current recommended practices. Not only has the knowledge and expectation of engagement heightened globally, but the practices of the municipality have also been going through significant changes as well. A current example of this is the Oak Bay Police Department strategic plan that we reviewed today. The second page, titled Community Engagement Visibility, speaks to the increased importance of engagement, which our community and municipality have embraced. In addition, a quick review of the satisfaction survey reports the following. 72% of the residents think that they currently receive just the right amount of information from the district. When it comes to topics of interest for residents, 79% want more information on planning, as we see at our meetings now. 78% on building projects or new developments, 75% on upcoming events, and 70% on taxes, 70% on parks and recreational programs and events. When looking for information about Oak Bay, 65% go directly to the website. Most, 52%, would prefer to be contacted by the district by email, 28% by mail. 72% of the residents are satisfied with the opportunities to engage on matters regarding land use, community, and strategic planning. And in 2012, we didn't have a website. We now have a very robust website that is providing information to the community. We have provided our draft report, which we believe can be used as one of the talking points of the proposed public forum. So our report is actually in 2 parts here. We provided the draft report, and we provided an outline for a public engagement, which would be called a public forum. The 2012 and 2016 task forces did not, in an open public meeting, ask the community how we can meet their expectations of adequate engagement and transparency. Almost all communities that we have researched have conducted a community engagement review, which included a public forum of some form. Our belief is that the proposal before you will allow the task force to complete our work. We ask the committee of the whole recommend to council that the public forum proposal, including support, be approved as presented. In addition, we would ask that the mayor increase the number of members on the task force and council provide clear direction on the mandate of the task force. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments from committee? Mayor Jensen.
Just in terms of the last point made by Councillor Croft, we have now 3-paragraph proposed mandate that was added today to our agenda. So that might be a good starting point as to where we might want to support the work of the task force.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Murdoch.
Well, I have some comments, but I have a question first, then we'll go to the public. And the forums that are being proposed here, there's in the mandate, it just says the group will sort of arrange the forums, but what is the topic of the forums? Is it just to talk about public engagement, or is this more of a town hall where these are going to be essentially open areas for people to ask questions about the municipality and of council?
The task force felt that we should have a focused forum, and that the focus of the forum should be community engagement. We have not done an outreach and community engagement. We felt that to complete our report, and on the direction of council, we felt that that would be the best way to complete our report.
Okay, so just okay. So the report is essentially seen as largely complete. You want to get feedback on this to finalize it, and then take it forward for deliverables to council. Is that the idea?
And that's exactly correct. And our expectation is that there'll be some other things that come from the public that we can add to this report that we may have missed in our small committee to try and get this report to council in a timely fashion, which now hasn't happened.
Okay. I'll listen to other comments here. I have a bit of an issue here. I don't know that the report is complete enough to take. I mean, I think it should be essentially fully complete before it goes out to the public for comment, because I think some of I'll get to some of my comments on it, and we'll see what other people think, but I think there may need one more step in here if we're going to do that piece. But anyway.
In all honesty, we did leave the report incomplete. We know it's incomplete. We intended to leave it incomplete as a task force, because we don't want to discuss the report as a finished report, because we think we need the public's input to this report, and that's the very reason why we did not complete it. We don't think it should be complete at this point, in all honesty.
Councillor Ney.
I like the report a lot. I think it sets up some really nice frameworks. It's done a lot of good research on what other jurisdictions are doing. It's captured some of the key templates and frameworks that are used internationally and by other organizations and governments, etc. So I like that part of it. I think you've provided a nice report card. I do appreciate these are questions. I do have a comment question, okay, to Councillor Croft, okay? But I like it. And I also want to thank Jan Mears and Councillor Zelka for the work that they did. I think it's really good. I'll be interested what other concerns are around the incompleteness. I would like to hear that we can't address. But my question has to do actually around what Councillor Murdoch is asking, what the public forum would be addressing. You've answered that, Councillor Croft, but so you've answered it. But I do have some comments, so maybe I'm going to save that until after we've heard from the public then, okay?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure, one of my concerns is I'm not sure if we actually need more people to be working on this task force. And I'm really, I look at this report and I'm not sure if it's really what we're looking for, and whether or not we actually need more public engagement to talk about it, this task force. So I'm going to be very interested as well to hear what the public says, and then we'll have more comments from there. So I will go to the public. If anyone from the public would like to address committee, now would be the time to come forward. Ms. Patterson.
Esther Patterson, Woodlawn Crescent. Thank you, Madam Chair and General Operator of the meeting, it seems, and to members of council. First of all, I do wish to thank the task force for the work on the report. And I have a couple of comments on it. I was very pleased to see the references to the International Association for Public Participation. I've attended some of their meetings. I have had the opportunity both in the U.S. and in Canada to attend their meetings. And certainly a takeaway from those meetings was open government is a global movement and it's here to stay. And what the other takeaways I had from that is what that meant. And it meant transparency and accountability, not hiding or hoarding information, but sharing it in a timely and transparent manner, ensuring that everyone affected by a decision is involved, and creating processes where decisions reflect not just the needs of the many, but are also mindful of the needs of those who are underrepresented. Means fostering dialogue that moves beyond positions and towards values and common ground. And it means bringing fact and data into decision-making process. The engagement report touched on some of these, but I guess I'll just put my spin on I'll use your references from the report. For example, the 2016 satisfaction survey. Would the results have been different if council had been fully transparent and released the asset management reports, and staff had reported that most of our infrastructure was in very poor condition prior to the satisfaction survey? The upland sewer separation. If the conversation was broader, if residents were given the choice of using annual municipal revenues from gas taxes to be paying for roadworks in the annual operating budgets and financing the upland sewer separation project, would we have had a more meaningful discussion? I certainly know where the Canadian Taxpayers Federation stands on the issue. And one thing that was missed in the report, really, or it probably because you were working as a task force and the things unfolded as they did, but that it doesn't really mention the hundreds of residents that turned out to speak about land application and the comments that we heard repeated over and over again. Fix the process to be fair and transparent, demonstrate leadership, and establish comparative measurables. So I hope as this goes forward in whatever form it does, that the concepts of open government find their way into the fundamentals for community engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Patterson. Anyone else like to come forward? Ms. Matthews?
Thank you for your comments. Really appreciate them. My comments aren't as well prepared as that, but one of the, I don't know if I can raise this, but one of the concerns I've had with this particular council is the lack of community engagement, and I think that there was a promise that there would be a lot of community engagement. So I'm pleased that at least you're trying to address that, I think, widespread complaint now through this kind of a report. One of the things I'm concerned about is putting a cap on the number of people that can participate in these forums. I think that's, I was invited to attend one focus group, and I felt privileged and honored to be there. But somebody selected me to come. And there must be lots of other forums and task groups that I might have been interested, but I never knew about them, and I was never invited to come. So rather than having you decide who gets to come, let me decide if I want to come. And I think the idea of registering makes sense for a meeting. But if you've got 200 people that have registered, you need to find more time. You can't just put a cap on it. I think you have to leave it open and let the community decide, and the members of the community decide who's going to attend and when they attend. So I just hope that you allow the community to be empowered to decide when they want to participate, rather than you over-controlling it, which I think has been going on in my experience. So whatever you can do, thank you for the work you're doing. I know you have a long-term commitment to community engagement, and that's why you're sitting where you are, so I appreciate that. But the idea of over-controlling this and not just responding and inviting us to come, and I think the web presence is still not that fantastic, and I think many of us still read the Oak Bay News, and I think having an awful lot more communication through the Oak Bay News. So many of us are spending so much time on the web during the day, just to be able to read the Oak Bay News at dinner time or in bed or somewhere else where you don't have your computer all the time. You know, I think you need to communicate much more widely through this. And I think the other thing in terms of just community engagement is that when we do send emails, when we do communicate to you, you're still not really acknowledging receipt of communications to say, look, thank you, you know, at least acknowledging that you've made an effort to communicate, either verbally or in writing. And I think that's still, maybe it's a problem with not enough people to respond, but I think that kind of community engagement will go a long way too, to feel people are, that you're listening. So thanks very much, and I look forward to however you're going to roll this out. I think it's great that you at least have it on the agenda and have put people like Tom on that committee, so thank you.
Thanks, Smith Matthews. And just to clarify, when a letter does come into the municipality, it is answered within, Ms. Jones, can you tell me, or is there a certain amount of time that it's answered within? Or that everybody gets an answer, correct?
That's our attempt. I don't know that we have it down to a science. I know that we staff work very hard in terms of trying to respond, but unless I'm missing something, most correspondence that comes via email or in some written form, there's some kind of acknowledgement from staff. We may not be able to do that with phone calls, that kind of thing, but if council members direct things to staff as well, we make sure that they are circulated to all members of Mayor and Council. Perfect, thank you. Anyone else would like to come forward? I see 3 people coming forward, so take a number. Mr. Appleton.
Yeah, Andrew Appleton, Windsor Road. I'll be very brief. Just further to our earlier comments about public engagement and the discussion that's taking place about how finely crafted something should be before it goes out to the public, before the public's given a chance to discuss it. I would definitely speak, and from what we heard from the public, giving them a very wide open sort of blank slate approach. What we heard from some people participating was that they were concerned that there was a bit of an undercurrent running through some of their commentary, was that they were concerned that there was already a decision that had been made and that we were sort of asking for support for something, or asking to sort of trying to gauge opinion around something that might already be planned. And in some cases it was difficult to convince them that we really were just throwing the door open to all of their suggestions. So I would guess, and that applied to both our Turkey Head discussions and also a discussion that we had early at the first night market about ideas for Oak Bay Avenue and Oak Bay Village, which was just an open-ended discussion. So in terms of the discussion around how structured something needs to be before the public is given an opportunity to engage with it, I think that you could get some good positive results with having a more free-form discussion around topics in general.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hello again, still Curtis. I'm glad I'm not the only one that found limiting the number of participants to engage in a task force on community engagement a little bit dichotomous. You would think, you know, if you have 180 people sign up, you should have 3 sessions instead of 2. The other thing I would like to point out is that the correspondence that was received on November 19th, read through that quite closely a couple of times, and I thought there was some really good points in there. So I would encourage the task force to look at that closely. Another concern of mine was the chart got condensed from the beginning of Ms. Patterson pointed out the name of the organization that provided that. By the time it got to the end, it was much smaller and less robust, and I found that troubling. Well, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And one more.
I'll be very brief because we're all very tired.
We have another meeting after this, so it's okay.
I just want you to make clear, I submitted a document, and I still don't understand, and I really don't understand what council expect to hear from us here, from the community. I don't know what the purpose of the document is. I don't know what is it that you expect to hear from us. I don't know what's happening moving forward. What is it that you will approve or not approve today? What I know is that the document, the way it is absolutely not acceptable. The document is not incomplete. The document is factually, conceptually wrong in many ways, and I tried to point that out in my submission. Not acceptable in many, many ways. And I'm not going to repeat it. It's in my submission. As a resident, I'd like to hear what is it that you expect from the document? Do we need a document to start with? Where are we moving forward in terms of community engagement? The way I perceive it, this is the last year of your term. At this point, the way I feel it, I have a council representing me which is absolutely divided. I question if this is the year to discuss public engagement. And I have reasons for that. Does it make any sense to discuss public engagement when I have elected officials who sometimes I perceive are mistrusted by the community, who run sometimes with their political agendas, with due respect? So what is to engage a community when I go behind and engage with groups of the community? So it's constantly undermining. That's the way I feel it. There's a lot of mistrust. So what's the point in creating a community engagement when I don't want to engage the community? In many, with due respect, what I'm saying here is that I see that we do have divided the council. Do we really need to discuss community engagement right now? Leave it for next term. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Anyone else want to come forward?
Wendy Cornock again. This might be absolutely the wrong place for this, but I just had a question with regards to transparency and information and people knowing what's going on. The development that I was here to speak about, was a huge sign, and there has been a huge sign so that people in the community could know about what was going on. There's never been a date on it. Who's responsible for putting a date on it when it's to come to council? I signed up because I knew that when I questioned, I signed up to get information about meetings so that I could be aware of. And I've had a whole lot of emails, and it's like, well, this meeting's from May 17th. And I'm like, I don't even understand it. And about a week before the meeting tonight was when I got the agenda, and the minutes from the last meeting that I spoke on have not been posted. So how are people in the community that might be affected supposed to know what's going on so they can speak? And like I said, I don't know if this is the right time, but it just felt like it was. So I just will put that out there. And thank you.
Thank you. Do we, just a question to Steph, do we ever put a date on the sign of when the meeting is? We should, yes?
Council adopted an amended land use procedures bylaw back in 2015. So the procedures for signage are set out in that document. The format for the sign itself is in that document. So the general description of the proposal is on the sign, contact information is on the sign, a date goes on the sign for the formal public hearing.
So what we just heard was that there was no dates. Oh, for the public hearing, not for the committee of the whole. Correct. I see. Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the public like to come forward? Okay, so I think I'm going to put it back to council. Any further comments from council? Councillor Croft.
I like to thank the public for their input, and I'd just like to comment on the numbers. Part of the reason is because of the limitation of the number of spaces that we have, and then also the number of people that we would have responsible at each of the tables, because we look to do this in a cafe style so that we would have 8 to 10 people at a table. So you look at a space and you get that many people, and then you need facilitators at each of the table to take notes and report out. It does become more hard to manage. And so it was the committee's task force thinking that this would be the best way to do it. And certainly if we had that many people sign up, we could add another session. There's nothing wrong with that. We would like to hear from as many people as possible. The task force is also thinking about the possibility of adding something to the website for information. There's all sorts of things that we can do to do this. We just haven't fleshed it out because we haven't received instructions from council as to how they would like to proceed.
Thank you. Councillor Murdoch.
Thank you, Chair. I guess my comments on this relate to Ms. Cornak's comments at the end there, because I think that boils down to what it is our job is, and that the public's input is, and the responsibilities there. Most of what we deal with here is our land use issues and other changes and issues that come before the community that affect the community, and we have some legislative requirements that we have to post things, and we have public hearings, and we have other processes in here. And my thought on public engagement for the most part has been, how do we use that to the best ability to drive good decision making? There's no reference in this report to driving good decision making, providing information to council. At the end of the day, and I really apologize for my voice here, council is, we're held accountable for the decisions that we make for the community. My hope is that when we have the tasks coming before us, like a land use piece, that the neighbors do come out so we hear their concerns. We don't have to agree with them, and we have to make that decision, but we have to hear it so that we're making a decision with all the available information. But most people I know who are my age do not want to come out to 1,000 public meetings a year and tell us what to do. They want to trust us that we're going to make a good decision, and we take all the information into account. There's lots of good things in this report, but I'm not sure it gets us to that decision-making piece. There's lots of aspects and a high level around the website. Again, these are often just staff-related availability pieces. Getting things out in a timely fashion, getting those pieces in there. They're not sort of specifically to ideas about things, although I guess we could take that as a priorities from the public. What I would hope to get from the public engagement forums is, I guess, I appreciate that having a doors wide open for ideas is a good thing in some cases, but if you have 60 or 120 or 180 people in a room, without having any structure to that, without sort of saying, here's a bunch, green sky it, but here's, say, 20 things that we've thought through that are actually ideas we've actually taken the time and worked to tease out the pros and cons and the impact of that. Saying, well, we want more of this and more of that doesn't necessarily drive good decision making on our part. And I think for the most part will cause frustration on the part of people showing up to these events and sort of having these ideas and maybe not getting any meaningful feedback for us to distill that. And again, I guess I would, if we're going to go down that path, I would expect commitment from this working group to take that information, do a really thorough report and come back to us with some really meaningful recommendations out of that to come back. And I guess, so that'd be one, I would hope that commitment is there to do that in the timeframes that we have available to us. I'm going to go just check my notes here to see if there's anything I wrote down ahead of this to talk to, but I think that's the biggest pieces of this. I think, I'm going to use this example. It's one of many in here, but there's a lot of things in this report that, referring to IAP2 decision-making criteria or public engagement is valuable because it's a great, the International Association of Public Participation, IAP2. That framework is very valuable. It's good to have. But at the end of the day, we're not in a consultative piece where we have to make decisions as legislators. So we have to get information to us. We have in this, if I was coming to one of these public forums, I'd be looking at the recommendations. Number one, what's needed? I'll quote here, timely facts-based information from the mayor and council and various committees and staff functions to from residents, taxpayers, business owners, and operators. I don't know what that means. So if we're having a public engagement process to speak to content, I think they're going to go to this report. And I think if they're going to this report, they're not getting enough structure to that to have a meaningful discussion. So I think my concern here is if we just say, yeah, go down and have these 2 sessions, that, I don't know if we're going to get anything really meaningful out of that to come back unless we have a little bit more front-end work done so we can talk to some specific ideas, have some answers to what the impact of some of those ideas would be, and so forth. So I'm not objecting to the idea of having some public forums on this. I think I'm just very concerned that we're going to go down and ask a lot of people to come to a room and talk about things in very vague forms and get nothing from it that's going to come back and help us make a decision as council, particularly before the next election, which is going to be critical if we're going to make any changes to our policies and so forth. So there you go.
Thank you, Councillor Murdoch. Councillor Ney.
Well, the way I see it is that long gone are the days when decisions are made just by a few experts and elected officials. It seems to me that these decisions, a lot of the decisions need to be made with real input from those who are most impacted by the decision. So, and I think that this report is making an effort to do that, but it's not just doing that. It's got a lot of other recommendations around the work of municipal governance that increases opportunities for the public to connect with information, with decisions that have been made, to allow interchanges of communication where the public has input into the workings of the municipality and services, and where the municipality can broadcast out. So the way I see that this report goes forward, if it's got some incompleteness to it, is that we bring the public. Not all people want to be engaged. They're happy to get on with their lives and do other things, but many do. So it's an invitation for those who would like to participate to comment perhaps on the recommendations that are made here. There's a nice report card with recommendations of ways to increase the engagement in the community, which actions have been rated as underway or ongoing or completed. And the community could have an opportunity to, for example, prioritize those action items or not. Some of them have budget implications and others don't. But that would be useful information for this council to move forward. I personally don't see the election as an issue here. This maybe should, it's never too late for us to find a way where we can agree on strategies for increasing engagement with our community, whether there's an election in sight or not. I don't really see the relevancy of that. If we adopt and move forward particular recommendations in this council, they'll be used by the next council. And if we don't, it's there for, we can't fetter the decision of any future council, but it's for them to consider and build on or not. So I support the idea of moving us forward to invite the community. I agree that I don't think they should be capped. I think that is problematic. It should be open to whoever would like to participate, and for us to accommodate that. So when the time comes, I'd be happy to move both the receipt of this report and the recommendations that are made.
Thank you.
And the mandate as
well. Any other comments? Mayor Jensen.
Quite some time ago when I first came to council, public engagement was just posting a meeting agenda, and we didn't even have a public participation period. We just came, and I remember when we went through the first OCP just after I was first elected, I think we had 1 or 2 public meetings where 2 or 3 people attended. We've come a long, long way from there. And I think and this has been a very good and I think healthy debate overall. And I think it does show where there's a tension And the tension is on the one side between getting a completed report, which we just ask public to comment on, versus having a complete, clean slate at the other end. And those are the kind of the spectrum. And perhaps there's dangers in both at one end or the other. And I recall, and as an example, when we did the upland sewer the first time, we were at one end of the spectrum. And that was, this is what we're going to do. Do you like it? That was in essence the consultation we did. And we heard in no uncertain terms, and council backed off completely from that. So this time around, when we went back to a public engagement of the upland sewer issue, I think we were at the other end of the spectrum. We kept a very open mind. We did put some markers down as what some of the options were, but by and large, we wanted to hear what the public said. And I think we held 3 or 4 open meetings where the public not only could comment on some of the options we presented, but had the option or had the ability to put other options on the table. And we now know that that particular public engagement was highly successful from the point of view that I think we got buy-in from the neighbors. In fact, our last public engagement meeting, there really wasn't a lot of opposition to what was eventually chosen. And it was just a matter of some nuances in how to operationalize the plan. So there you have one example where when it first started out, I don't know what that was, 9 years ago, we had one end of the spectrum. It was all done. We just want to hear, do you like it or don't you? Not a lot of optional discussions or blue skying. And then this time around, I think we did it well. So we can and have done public engagement well. So I think what this report is trying to do is trying to kind of create, here's some of the issues that we see. So we're not at the one end where the report is complete and essentially asks, do you like it or don't you? Nor are we at the other end complete, nothing has been done. We're a ways ahead where this task force has come up with some of the issues that should be addressed, and also leaving enough space there for the public to come and say, well, you didn't think of this, you didn't think of that. And that's what I heard Councillor Croft saying. They purposely left it incomplete because they want that space. They want that ability to blue sky. And I think we should provide that. I think we've also heard that there's not going to be any limits on the number of people who register. If we have to have 3, we have to have 3. But limiting each of the sessions to a certain number, and maybe we need 3 or 4. So I think the report, incomplete as it is, and some of the recommendations in it, I think, and the mandate that's being proposed are worthy of proceeding to the next stage. And if this passes, I will expand the committee and re-energize it. And I think by the end of the day, I think we'll have a great product. So I guess we just need the motion and to do that. Thank you.
Councillor Murdoch.
Has the motion's been made already? Has it or not? Okay. It was moved by Councillor Nayan.
There was no seconder, so I just took that as a comment. So if you'd like to make the motion, you go ahead and we can continue our discussion.
So should I do each one separate? So I move to receive the report? And I move to go to the public forums, and I move to receive the mandate. Well, can I ask staff, through you, Chair?
I think it's all one motion, correct, Ms. Jones? Yes.
We'll call it all one motion.
Okay, so I need a seconder.
I guess I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Discussion, Councillor Murdoch.
Thank you. I'll try and be brief because I think we spent probably enough time on this. And I agree actually entirely with the mayor's comments on that. A complete report isn't the right answer. Here's what we've done. Please come and tell us how great we are. Bad idea. Clean slate where you have no information provided, I think, is also a bad idea. So the question is really whether this report provides a framework for a good discussion. I have a hard time saying it does. And I think it's actually very hard. That's hard work to get to that point. I know an effort has been made here to do it. There's a lot of good there's a lot of good stuff in here. There's some really good pieces, but there's some pieces and suggestions in here that I think are going to cause, if they're taken as real ideas, they're going to be taken cause issues. This idea of instigating two-way communications with Twitter and Facebook and so forth. We looked at that in the original one in 2012. The impact on staff time and everything else with that is very, very impactful in terms of moderating those kind of forums, being the official spokesperson for council. We are a legislative body, so those are difficult. Certainly, if you had a range of things, certainly the priority to my mind would be getting the core parts of what we do in terms of the minutes and the agendas and the notifications of neighbors and mailing lists and all those sorts of things that can engage people probably higher at the priority. I appreciate those are some of the discussions, but I mean, they're listed in here as recommendations. I think there's some, without some framework of what the pros and cons are and so forth, with 180 people, or 120 people, or 60 people, or even 20 people in a room, having to spend an hour of your time explaining that, without having that framework, and without having some of the sort of the nuts and bolts of this prepared ahead of time, I think it's going to make it very difficult for it to get to for an effective discussion. So if this goes forward, I'm hoping that the task force sort of puts together some good informational pieces ahead of time to frame it. I don't think I can support the motion as it is right now because I don't think this is quite ready to go there yet. But we'll see how it goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen, and then Councillor Ney.
I think Councillor Murdoch makes a good point in terms of having a framework, but what I see that's going to be the workup that this committee will be doing, because I don't think you can just come with one or two ideas. You have to kind of have some of the issues around which the discussions can properly coalesce. So I see that workup being done by an expanded, re-energized committee, and so when they finally get to the community forums, we will have that framework. So,
thank you, Councillor Ney, and then Councillor Croft.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Or thank you. My comments are. Councillor Murdoch, I really appreciate you speaking to what your concerns are about this process, because I think that's not uncommon. That we're afraid that things are not solidified enough or settled enough or even clear enough. One of my good friends who does these kinds of processes in the city and throughout the province, actually across Canada, I was actually having coffee with her the other day and talking to her about these pieces of work, and she's one of the key models that she carries in her mind as she's doing these often very testy, kind of polarized forums. As she says, embrace the clunky. It's something she keeps, it's the mantra she keeps in her head all the time. Embrace the chunky. Yeah. Well, it could be clunky, it could be chunky, kind of similar things, but the point is, it doesn't need to be settled. And when somebody's experienced and skilled facilitators, they can manage the room and organize the forum and the discussion in a way that brings people together to generate ideas and move whatever the focus of the meeting is. And I think we've seen that in the work that we do, and I have confidence that we're going to engage a good facilitator to do this and put the invitation out to the community, and we're going to walk the talk. We're going to engage the community in the way that this report is speaking to. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Councillor Croft.
I think Councillor Ney has spoken to my comments. If it is Council's wish for us to bring back a more robust, not report, but a proposal for public meetings that maybe speaks to some of these issues, we'd be probably, as a task force, happy to do that before we take it to the street.
Thank you. I just have a couple of comments. I think that there's been a lot been said about public engagement around the table. I think that the mayor is correct. We've come a long way in the last little while on how we engage the public, our residents, for certain things. I think we really fall down in other ways. I look at other municipalities like the City of Victoria and the District of Saanich, and they have very open town hall meetings all the time with their residents. We don't. And I think that's what that's all our residents are looking for, is an opportunity to come to a meeting where they can whether there's a theme to the meeting, whether it's housing or trees or whatever the theme happens to be, and that they can ask questions or have comments. And I think that's all our public is really looking to do. And I have to agree with Councillor Murdoch that I'm not sure that this report lays this out in a way that I can support. So I don't think I'll be voting for this either. So on that, I'm going to let Councillor Murdoch say one more comment, and then I'm going to call the question.
Sorry, not a comment, actually, a question, because the point was raised that we're going to be hiring a facilitator for these sessions, and as far as I know, we have no budget attached to this. So, what does that look like? Sorry, that caught me a little bit off guard in terms of what that's going to be, because this is a mayor's task force that's sort of been going through this sort of, all voluntary process, and when the idea of town halls was raised it was a motion made by Councillor Braithwaite to do that. It was really in response to some other meetings that were being held. That was a different sort of track, and that was just going to be council taking questions, and now I'm confused a little bit. So, is there, Councillor Ney, if you could maybe clarify.
If I did say hire, that's not what I meant, because as far as I know, there's not a budget, but to engage a skilled facilitator is what I would have meant to say.
I would take that to be engaged. I take to mean hire.
Well, no, there's lots of volunteers. I've done that in forums. I've used Play Speak and other community organizations to bring in folks who will facilitate, who are extremely skilled. We used Mr. Appleton here and the group Play Speak. Yeah. Yeah, brilliant facilitators and very skilled.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Okay, so I'm going to call the question. All in favor and opposed? Councillor Braithwaite, Councillor Murdoch opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. So I think we're going to have a motion to adjourn, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take a 5-minute recess, and we will reconvene as council. So I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor? Opposed? None opposed? Thank you. So 5-minute break. Thank you.